the unthinkable happened. Veteran Captain Jack Xenon, a man who'd piloted the battered freighter Odyssey through meteor showers that would shred flagships and stared down KRYLL pirates with nothing but a faulty plasma pistol and a glare, received a direct order from the granite-faced Commander Valerius: share his private, regulation size, and frankly, none too fresh, sleeping bag with a mysterious alien fugitive. Yeah, you heard that right. And what this enigma of a passenger, did next in the chilling silence of his cramped quarters, well, that was set to defy not just coalition protocol but potentially shatter the fragile peace hanging by a thread across the galaxy. Stick around for the next few minutes of this story, and you'll discover exactly how this one, frankly bizarre, order spirals into a desperate, galaxy-spanning manhunt that will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the powers pulling the strings. Jack Xenon, captain of the independent freighter Odyssey, wasn't a rookie. 32 light years under his belt, or something like that if you counted in actual years, and he figured he'd seen it all. Smuggling, blockades, creatures that could eat Durasteel for breakfast. But this took the whole damn cake. The holographic image of Commander Valerius shimmered before him on the bridge, the officer's face as warm and inviting as a vacuum leak. You want me to transport what? Jax had asked, one eyebrow arching so high it practically tried to escape his forehead. It wasn't often he questioned a direct order, especially from Valerius, a man whose idea of a pep talk was a list of potential court-martial offenses. Not what, Captain Xenon, Valerius corrected, his voice as dry as Martian dust. Who? High-value package. Humanoid alien female. Need-to-know basis only. And you, Captain, currently don't need to know much. Jax folded his arms across his broad chest, the worn fabric of his flight jacket creaking in protest. And what, precisely, do I need to know, Commander? Just the basics, right? Like, does she bite? Is she allergic to recycled oxygen? Does she have a tendency to, say, explode when stressed? That she needs to get to Nexus Station in one piece, Valerius stated, his eyes like chips of obsidian. That's it. No name provided beyond the asset. No species registry. No reason for the transport. The Odyssey departs at 0600 tomorrow, Standard Galactic Time. Your passenger will arrive 30 minutes prior. Get her to Nexus Station. Safely. That's all. The transmission snapped off before Jax could even formulate another incredulous question. He sighed, the sound loud in the sudden quiet of the bridge, running a hand through his already disheveled dark hair. 5 years in the nominally neutral Galactic Transport Division, hauling everything from medical supplies to questionable artworks for eccentric billionaires, and he'd never been handed an assignment so deliberately, dangerously vague. Usually, it was straightforward. Cargo Manifest A, Destination B. Avoid trouble. Collect payment. Simple. This felt different. This felt like walking into a dark nebula with no scanners and a target painted on his hull. Problem, Captain. First Officer Kale materialized beside him, his young face etched with concern. Kale was good. Too good for a rust bucket like the Odyssey, probably. Loyal, though. That counted for a lot in this galaxy. We've got a special passenger coming aboard tomorrow, Kale, Jax replied, turning away from the star-dusted viewport that had shown him too many empty stretches of void. Apparently, she's so damn important that even I don't get to know who, or what, she truly is. He tried for a light tone. Failed miserably. Kale's eyebrows shot up. That's, highly irregular, sir. Understatement of the century. Tell me about it. Jax checked his wrist display, the flickering lights of the Odyssey's aging systems reflecting in his tired eyes. Make sure the VIP quarters are prepped, and by prepped, I mean actually clean for once. Run a full diagnostic on all systems, especially the shields and the engines. If this passenger is as important as Valerius implies, and his tone implied, more important than your continued existence, Xenon, I want this ship running at peak efficiency. Or, as peak as this old girl gets. Yes, sir. As Kale left to carry out his orders, a knot of pure, unadulterated dread tightened in Jax's gut. He couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment, this asset, would be more trouble than a nest of space hornets in his pressure suit. The human race had only been a part of the wider galactic coalition for 15 short years, still considered cosmic newcomers by most of the ancient, stolid elder species. Earth had proven its worth quickly, though. Humans might lack the millennia of advanced technology some species boasted, or the innate psychic abilities of others, but they made up for it with a stubborn adaptability, a surprising resilience, and a frankly alarming knack for thinking so far outside the box they weren't even in the same dimension as the box anymore. These qualities had earned them a grudging respect, and sometimes, a healthy dose of fear, among the older civilizations. It also meant they often got the assignments no one else wanted. The dirty jobs. The suicide missions. The transport this unnamed alien female of unknown origin and even more unknown danger kind of gigs. He often had this fleeting image, a recurring flash behind his eyes, especially when he was stressed or deep in thought, a stellar nursery, vast clouds of incandescent gas swirling, birthing new suns. It was breathtakingly beautiful, yet always tinged with an inexplicable, profound sorrow, a sense of immense loss. He usually dismissed it as just space fatigue. Too many lonely jumps. Too much time staring into the abyss. But tonight, the image felt sharper, more poignant, somehow connected. Ridiculous. The next morning, 0530 hours, Jax stood at the docking bay, the metallic tang of the station's recycled air sharp in his nostrils. He watched as a sleek, unmarked black shuttle, the kind favored by coalition special ops or less savory organizations, approached the Odyssey. Right on time. The shuttle docked with barely a whisper, its airlock cycling open with ominous efficiency to reveal two figures, both clad in the distinctive, menacing black armor of Coalition Security Forces Elite Division. Definitely not the regular port patrol. Between them stood a smaller, slighter figure, draped entirely in a hooded cloak of some dark, light-absorbent material that concealed everything except a pair of delicate, slender hands. The skin of those hands seemed to shimmer, to shift with a faint, almost imperceptible iridescent quality in the harsh docking bay lights. Captain Xenon, one of the security officers, stepped forward, his voice a synthesized, impersonal baritone. Your passenger. As ordered. His other hand never strayed far from the heavy caliber pulse rifle slung across his chest. Friendly. Jax nodded curtly, trying to project an air of nonchalant command he was miles away from feeling. He extended a hand in a universal gesture of greeting towards the cloaked figure. Welcome aboard the Odyssey. I'm Captain Jax Xenon. We'll endeavor to make your journey comfortable. The hood tilted upward. And Jax Xenon, a man who thought he'd seen every strange and wondrous and terrifying thing the galaxy had to offer, found himself staring into the most unusual, most captivating, most utterly alien eyes he'd ever encountered. They were large, almond-shaped, and a vibrant, impossible orange, like twin captured suns, and they seemed to glow with a soft, internal light of their own. As the cloak parted slightly further, he caught a glimpse of a feminine face, features that were almost human, yet subtly, exquisitely different, more refined, cheekbones high and sculpted, a delicate chin, and skin that possessed that same faint, luminescent quality as her hands. And beneath the edge of the cloak, near her throat, he saw it again, those intricate, almost invisible lines of light, the vitae streams, pulsing faintly. This was no mere fugitive, she was a whisper of cosmic power, a secret that could shatter empires or unite them, and he, Jack Sinon, was about to become the key, whether he liked it or not. "Thank you, Captain," she said, her voice a soft, melodic contralto, with an accent he couldn't place, a strange, lilting cadence that sent shivers down his spine. "Your discretion in this matter is noted and appreciated." Her orange eyes studied him with an intensity that made him feel like his very soul was being weighed and measured. The security officers, their faces impassive behind their dark visors, handed Jax a sealed, heavy-grade data chip. "Her complete documentation and destination coordinates, Captain. For your eyes only. Coalition-level Omega clearance." Omega clearance? Jax's blood ran cold. That was above even Valerius's usual pay grade. With that, the lead officer concluded, "Our part is done." They turned, a synchronized, military pivot, and strode back into their shuttle, leaving Jax alone on the docking ramp with his silent, cloaked, and increasingly mysterious passenger. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on him. As the shuttle disengaged with a soft sigh of hydraulics, Jax gestured Lyra Nova towards the Odyssey's main airlock. The door slid shut behind her, a final, metallic thud sealing them inside. He glanced down at the data chip in his hand, feeling its ominous weight. 7 days to Nexus Station, he thought, a grim foreboding coiling in his stomach, or 7 days to hell. And a new, deeply unsettling question began to form, a question that would haunt him for the days to come. Why was he, Jack Sinon, a simple freighter captain known more for his stubborn reliability and his aging ship than any kind of Black Ops expertise, chosen for something this sensitive, this obviously dangerous? What cosmic law had this alien truly broken, and could he, one man against shadowy, powerful forces, possibly protect her? Or was he just another disposable pawn in some grand, interstellar game orchestrated by men like Valerius, whose motives were as deep and unreadable as the void itself? Little did he know, this was just the beginning, the very first whisper of a storm that would soon engulf them both. Whispers in the void, shadows in pursuit. The data chip felt like a cold stone in Jack Sinon's palm, a dense knot of secrets he couldn't unravel. 3 days into their silent journey towards Nexus Station, and the passenger, Lyra Nova, as she tersely offered when he pressed for a name, remained an enigma, secluded behind the closed door of the VIP quarters. He'd tried the chip again that morning, the Odyssey's best decryption suite bouncing off its alien encoding with a flicker of angry red light and a frustrated digital sigh. Useless. What secrets did it hold? And why was it so heavily encrypted if this was just a simple transport? Questions, always more questions. First Officer Kale found Jax on the bridge, staring out at the star-dusted void, the same void that seemed to fill the passengers' quarters. "Still no word from our guest, Captain." Kale's voice was low, laced with the same unease that had been a quiet hum throughout the ship since Lyra Nova had come aboard. The crew felt it. An unspoken tension, a waiting. You could cut the atmosphere with a vibroknife. Jax nodded, his jaw tight. Not a peep. This silence, it's heavy, Kale. Too heavy. It felt like the calm before a meteor storm, the kind of quiet that screamed louder than any alarm. Was she planning something? Or just as scared as he was starting to feel? And then, as if summoned by his thoughts, the red alert klaxons blared, shattering the fragile peace. The bridge lights pulsed an urgent, crimson beat. Proximity alert. Cale barked, already at his station, hands flying across the console. Multiple contacts, Captain. 3, no, 4 unidentified vessels, closing fast. They're not hailing, sir. Predatory configuration. 4 of them. This wasn't a casual encounter. The main view screen flashed, showing 4 sleek, knife-edged ships, unmarked and painted a dead, non-reflective black, like holes punched in the fabric of space. They moved with a chilling precision, a hunter's pack. Jax's stomach tightened. Shields up. Battle stations. Cale, get me a firing solution, best you can. He gripped the command chair, his mind racing. These weren't clumsy pirates looking for easy plunder. This was professional. This was targeted. They're not pirates, he muttered, the words tasting like ash. They're hunters. And who, or what, were they hunting? The answer seemed terrifyingly obvious. The Odyssey shuddered violently as the first energy bolts slammed into their aft shields. Sparks showered from a damaged conduit near the engineering station. Shields at 60%, Captain. Cale yelled over the din of alarms and the groan of stressed metal. They're good. Damn good. Better than coalition patrols, even. Return fire. Target their lead ship, Cale. Give them something to think about. Jax snapped, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Odyssey wasn't a warship, but she wasn't toothless either. Her twin cannons spat coherent light, scoring a glancing blow on one of the attackers, causing it to momentarily veer off. But the enemy pressed their advantage, their fire accurate, relentless. This was no random skirmish, this was an ambush. Another volley struck, closer this time. The lights flickered wildly. Direct hit to port engine housing. Cale reported, his face grim. We're losing thrust on that side. They're targeting our engines, Captain. They don't want to destroy us outright. Jax's thoughts immediately flew to the silent passenger. They want her alive. Or at least, they want to board. The implications were chilling. Who was this Lyra Nova that someone would send a professional kill squad, or retrieval team, after her in the deep void? And why was he, Jax Xenon, caught in the middle of it? The encrypted data chip suddenly felt a lot heavier, like a lead weight dragging them all down. Had Valerius known this was coming? Was this part of the need to know he'd been so smug about? The breech doors hissed open, and Lyra Nova stepped through, a figure of impossible calm in the storm of red lights and concussions. She'd abandoned her concealing cloak. Now, a form-fitting, dark suit hugged her slender frame, and across its surface, intricate patterns of what looked like living light, the vitae streams Jax had glimpsed before, pulsed with a soft, orange luminescence. They seemed to shift and flow like captured nebulae beneath her skin. Her striking, almond-shaped orange eyes, usually holding a distant, unreadable quality, were now sharply focused, taking in the chaos of the bridge with an almost preternatural stillness. Captain, she said, her voice melodic yet carrying an undeniable current of authority that cut through the bridge's cacophony. Those ships are here for me. No fear, no panic. Just a statement of fact. Jax stared, momentarily forgetting the chaos. Her composure was more unnerving than the enemy fire. You know them? He demanded, his own voice tight. I know of them, she corrected, her gaze fixed on the tactical display where the enemy ships were tightening their noose, their movements precise and deadly. Or rather, who they likely serve. I can help, Captain. I can mask our signature. A trick of my people. A trick? What kind of trick could save them now? Desperation gnawed at Jax. His ship was being systematically crippled. His orders were to protect her, get her to Nexus Station. His gut screamed that this was his only chance, however slim. But trusting his ship's systems to an unknown alien whose people were apparently trying to kill or capture her. It was madness. Pure, unadulterated madness. Yet, the alternative was capture or destruction. He looked at her, at the calm certainty in those glowing eyes, the subtle power emanating from the Vitae streams. He had to make a choice. Now. How? He bit out, the single word a testament to his dwindling options. I need access to an auxiliary navigation console. And your trust, Captain. Her lips curved in a faint, almost challenging smile. Trust. Easy for her to say. Navigator, step aside. Jax ordered, his voice rough. The young ensign at the auxiliary console looked startled but scrambled out of the way. Give her what she needs. He watched, heart pounding like a drum against his ribs, as Lyra's delicate fingers danced across the interface with a surprising, almost innate familiarity. Alien symbols and complex energy patterns flashed across the screen, a language no human on board could comprehend. The Odyssey bucked again under another barrage, the deck plating groaning in protest. How much more could the old girl take? What are you doing? Cale asked, his voice tight with a mixture of awe and deep suspicion, echoing Jax's own thoughts. Creating a blind spot, Lyra replied without looking up, her concentration absolute, her brow furrowed. The Vitae streams on her suit and skin pulsed brighter, more intensely, the orange light reflecting in her focused eyes. Captain, she said, her voice suddenly urgent, sharp as a shard of glass, when I give the word, I need you to cut all power to the ship. Everything except essential life support. Cut all power. Jax felt a cold dread creep up his spine. That'll leave us completely vulnerable. Shields will be down, no engines, no weapons, nothing. Were they trading one death sentence for another? Her orange eyes, blazing now like miniature suns, flicked to his. Trust me, Captain Xenon. It's our only way out of this. Do you see another? He didn't. Something in her gaze, a fierce confidence, perhaps, or the raw edge of shared desperation, made him nod curtly. He wouldn't admit it, not even to himself, but a part of him, the part that had always played the long odds, was already beginning to trust her. Or maybe he just had no other damn cards to play. On your mark, Lyra Nova. The Vitae streams on her skin seemed to thrum with a silent, powerful energy. The air around her crackled almost imperceptibly. 3, 2, 1. Now, Captain. Cut power. Her voice was a command, and he obeyed. Kill all main systems. Jax roared, his own voice echoing Valerius's earlier clipped authority. The bridge plunged into an abyss of darkness, the emergency lights sputtering and dying with a pathetic whine. Only the faint, ethereal glow of Lyra Nova's Vitae streams provided any illumination, casting long, dancing, eerie shadows across the tense faces of the bridge crew. The familiar hum of the engines died, replaced by an unnerving, tomb-like silence, broken only by the ragged sound of their own breathing and the distant, ominous creaks of the damaged hull. It felt like they were adrift in a coffin. What now? Jax whispered into the oppressive darkness, the silence amplifying the frantic thudding of his own heart. He could feel the sweat trickling down his back. We wait, Lyra whispered back, her voice a mere breath beside him, yet strangely reassuring. Her vitae streams cast an otherworldly glow on her face, making her look like some ancient, powerful deity of the void. They can't see us. Not anymore. Our shields are down, our signature should be a beacon out here, the tactical officer hissed from his darkened station, his voice strained with barely suppressed panic. They'll tear right through us. They'll board us within minutes. No, Lyra said, her voice soft but firm, resonating with an unshakable, almost unnerving confidence. They won't. And true to her word, the predatory dance of the enemy ships on the residual tactical display, now barely visible in the faint light from Lyra's energies, faltered. Their coordinated approach broke apart. They began to move erratically, their movements betraying confusion, then visible frustration, as if searching for a ghost in a graveyard. Had it actually worked? Could it be this simple? Or this complex? They're scanning for us, Lyra explained softly, her vitae streams dimming slightly, as if the effort was costing her precious energy. But they won't find us. I've masked our signature with a null energy field. A trick of my people. How? Jax demanded, his voice a low rumble, his mind reeling. The implications of her abilities were staggering. What kind of trick could make a freighter vanish from advanced sensors? What kind of people were the Ethel? She merely offered a small, enigmatic smile, the orange light of her markings reflecting in her eyes. For what felt like an eternity, tense, agonizing minutes where every creak of the hull sounded like impending doom, they drifted in the silent, cold darkness, watching through the main viewport as the hunter ship circled, their search patterns growing increasingly frantic, then, finally, visibly agitated. At last, with a final, frustrated sweep of their powerful sensors, the four black ships regrouped, and one by one, they shimmered and vanished into the cold indifference of hyperspace. Gone. Just gone. A collective, shaky sigh of relief swept through the darkened bridge as Kale, working by the faint glow of a handheld emergency lamp, confirmed their departure on a backup sensor. Slowly, cautiously, Jax gave the order to restore auxiliary power. The emergency lights flickered back on, casting a stark, utilitarian glow on the exhausted, stunned faces of his crew. The immediate danger had passed. They were alive. But Jax Xenon wasn't celebrating. Not yet. He turned, his face a granite mask in the harsh light, and fixed Lyra Nova with a hard, unwavering stare. The time for polite evasions, for cryptic half-truths, was over. Dead over. All right, Lyra Nova, he said, his voice dangerously quiet, each word carrying the weight of the lives she had just saved, and the answers he now demanded. I think it's time you told me exactly who you are. And why those assassins, because that's what they were, not just hunters, are chasing you across the entire damn galaxy. Lyra's expression, which had been one of focused intensity, softened into a weary solemnity. The vibrant glow of her vitae streams dimmed further, leaving her looking strangely vulnerable in the harsh emergency lighting. Not here, Captain, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, her gaze dropping for a moment before meeting his again. Your private quarters would be more appropriate for this conversation. There is much to tell. 20 minutes later, after ensuring the Odyssey was as secure as it could be with its damaged engines and depleted power reserves, after Kale had given him a grim preliminary damage report, they were bad, very bad, they'd be lucky to make Nexus Station at all, even at half speed. Jax faced Lyra Nova across the small utility table in his Spartan quarters. He'd offered her a stimulant, which she politely declined, and a nutrient bar, which she'd accepted with a quiet word of thanks. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions. Talk, he said simply, his arms crossed over his chest, his patience worn thin as old plasteel. He wasn't asking any more. Lyra sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weariness of ages, running a delicate hand through her cascade of silvery hair, which seemed to capture and refract even the dim light of his cabin. She looked down at her hands for a moment, then met his gaze, her orange eyes holding a universe of sorrow and a resilience that stunned him. My full name is Lyra Nova de Theron. I was, of the Ethel Collective. Ethel Collective. The name resonated faintly in Jax's memory from his academy days. A reclusive, highly advanced species, ancient beyond human comprehension, known for their unique energy manipulation abilities, the Vitae streams, he now presumed, and their almost complete withdrawal from Galactic Coalition affairs centuries ago. Rumored to be pacifists, artists, philosophers. Not targets for professional assassins. What had Valerius gotten him into? My father, Lyra continued, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands that she tried to hide, was High Chancellor Theron. He was assassinated 3 standard weeks ago. She paused, and Jax saw a flicker of raw, unbearable grief cross her usually composed features before she visibly, painfully, masked it again. Around her neck, Jax noticed for the first time, hung a small, intricately carved locket of some dark, polished wood or perhaps a strange, alien crystal. It seemed ancient, almost alive in the way it absorbed the light. Her fingers went to it now, clutching it tightly as if drawing strength from the inanimate object. He wondered what secrets that locket held. Another curiosity in a mission rapidly filling with them. The faction that killed him, they are traditionalists. They believe the Ethel should remain utterly isolated, that my father's policies of gradual, cautious re-engagement with the wider galaxy were a betrayal of our most sacred heritage. They see his vision, his hope for a future where the Ethel might once again share their light, as a profound threat. And you? Jax pressed, leaning forward. Where do you fit into this political intrigue? I intend to continue his work, she said, a spark of fierce, unexpected defiance flaring in her luminous orange eyes, a fire banked low but burning hot. The galaxy is changing, Captain Xenon. Isolation is no longer an option, not even for a people as old and set in their ways as some of the Ethel. My father understood that. There are loyalists, those who believed in his vision, who still believe. They are waiting for me at Nexus Station. They have arranged, or at least, they had arranged, safe passage for me to our homeworld, Ethelos, where I was to claim my rightful position in the collective's leadership. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze intense, compelling. Those ships, Captain. The assassins. They weren't just trying to stop me. They were sent to ensure my father's lineage and his dangerous, reformist vision ended with me. Permanently. Jax leaned back, the pieces clicking into place, forming a disturbing, deeply dangerous picture. Political intrigue on a galactic scale, a species capable of vanishing star ships, deadly assassins, and a hunted heir. And he, Jax Xenon, was right in the dead center of it, his ship battered, his crew at risk, his original mission parameters now looking like a quaint, idyllic memory. So, these aren't just random pirates we're dealing with, Jax stated, more to himself than to her, the grim reality settling in. No, Captain, Lyra confirmed, her voice quiet but firm. Assassins, highly skilled, disguised as common raiders to avoid coalition scrutiny. The very same ones who murdered my father. Her orange eyes hardened, the light within them turning cold and sharp. And the ones who hired them, the shadowy patrons behind this traditionalist faction, they are even more relentless, more powerful than the zealots within my own people. They have resources that span systems. The weight of her words settled in the small, utilitarian cabin, heavy and cold as the void outside. The Odyssey was damaged, limping through space, a flickering candle in a cosmic hurricane, and its mysterious, extraordinary passenger was not just a fugitive, but the heir to a shattered throne, the last hope of a dying vision, hunted by enemies both within her own enigmatic people and, it seemed, by shadowy, powerful forces that stretched far beyond the Ethel Collective's hidden borders. Their journey to Nexus Station, he now understood with a sickening lurch, had just become infinitely, terrifyingly more perilous. And the fate of more than just one alien princess might well rest on the shoulders of one very tired, very out of his depth freighter captain. The assassins who had attacked them, and the shadowy, more powerful entities Lyra Nova hinted were behind them, were not specters to be outrun indefinitely. They were a promise of future violence, a debt collector that always found its mark. Jack Xenon knew this with a chilling certainty that settled deeper than the slowly seeping cold in the Odyssey's rapidly freezing corridors. The damage reports from Kale were a litany of failing systems and dwindling power reserves. One engine was completely offline, the other sputtering like a dying man's last cough. They were limping, a wounded animal in the vast, uncaring void, bleeding vital energy with every passing moment. How long before they were completely dead in space? Or before those hunters found them again? All right, crew, listen up. Jax's voice, broadcast over the ship-wide intercom, was strained but steady, the captain's mask of command firmly, if somewhat shakily, in place. He had to project confidence, even if his own was currently taking a nosedive towards the event horizon of a black hole. We're taking heavy damage to the primary power conduits. Engineering is working on it, rerouting what they can, but for now, we're losing juice faster than we can make it. I'm ordering a full cut to non-essential systems. That includes main environmental controls. A pause, heavy with unspoken implications, the silence punctuated only by the ominous creak of stressed metal. It's about to get very cold in here. Colder than the void outside for some of us. His gaze, though unseen by the crew huddled in their respective sections, flickered towards the deck plans on his console, specifically to the VIP quarters where Lyra Nova was housed. Her species, the Ethel, ran warmer than humans, he now knew from her brief, reluctant explanations. This bone-chilling cold, a mere discomfort for his hardy human crew wrapped in thermal gear, would hit her much, much harder. He grabbed a spare thermal blanket from his locker, its rough fabric a stark contrast to the sophisticated alien it was intended for, and headed towards her sector, a knot of undeniable concern tightening in his chest. This was getting complicated. Far too complicated. The temperature aboard the Odyssey plummeted with alarming, brutal speed. Within hours, the corridors were dimly lit only by the eerie, pulsing emergency strobes, the metal bulkheads slick with a rapidly forming layer of rime frost. Crew members moved like bundled, faceless ghosts in their bulky, government-issued thermal gear, their breath pluming in thick white clouds in the frigid air. It was like navigating the inside of a dying cryo unit. Jax made his rounds, his own breath misting before him, the cold a gnawing ache in his bones, checking on the struggling repair crews and engineering, who were working in near-Arctic conditions, and the general morale of his people. They were good, his crew. Tough. Resilient. Grumbling, yes, but still functioning. But the ship, the Odyssey, was dying around them, groaning its metallic death rattles with every lurch and shudder. Lyra, he learned from a passing, shivering ensign whose teeth were chattering like castanets, had, with typical Ethel stoicism or perhaps just sheer stubborn pride, refused any special treatment, any rerouting of precious, life-sustaining power to her quarter's independent heating unit. He admired her resolve, her unwillingness to be perceived as a burden, even as he silently cursed her for her potentially life-threatening stubbornness. When he finally reached her cabin, a soft knock unanswered, a growing sense of unease prickling at the back of his neck, he didn't hesitate to override the lock. He found her near collapse. She was huddled on the small, utilitarian bunk, wrapped in every spare piece of fabric she could find, her own elegant traveling cloak, the thin ship-issue blankets, even a spare curtain she'd apparently ripped from the viewport. Yet, she was still racked by violent, uncontrollable shivers. Her lips, usually a soft coral, were tinged with a frightening, deathly blue, and the usually vibrant orange vitae streams that patterned her skin were terrifyingly dim, like fading embers on a dying fire, their light barely visible. The room's local heating unit was, as he'd suspected, completely inert, a cold, useless block of metal on the wall. This was bad. Really bad. "My heating unit," she managed to stammer, her voice a thin, trembling thread of sound, her incredible, luminous orange eyes clouded with pain and the creeping fog of severe hypothermia. It's dead, Captain. Damn it all to the KRYLL hells." Jack swore under his breath, frustration warring with a sudden, sharp surge of protective anger that surprised him with its intensity. He was on his feet, moving quickly, his own discomfort from the numbing cold forgotten in the face of her immediate, life-threatening peril. "You should have called for assistance. Activated your emergency beacon," he said, his voice sharper than he intended as he gently, carefully, guided her to sit up, her body alarmingly frail beneath the layers of fabric. "Your crew, they have more important tasks," she stammered, her teeth chattering so hard he worried they might break. She clutched the blankets tighter, her slender frame trembling like a leaf in a winter gale. I thought I could manage the cold." "You're no good to anyone, Lyra, least of all yourself, if you freeze to death before we even see Nexus Station," he said, the use of her first name slipping out naturally, easily, in his urgency and genuine concern. He was already rummaging through his own emergency locker, his fingers numb but quick, pulling out his personal, military-grade self-heating sleeping bag. It was bulky, designed for extreme environmental conditions, the kind of gear you prayed you'd never actually need. "Here." He unrolled it swiftly on her bunk, the material crinkling in the frozen silence. "This has a built-in thermal core, battery-powered. Heavy duty. It won't drain what little the ship has left from its primary reserves." Her eyes, even clouded and dull as they were with the encroaching cold, registered a flicker of profound, desperate gratitude. "Thank you, Captain Xenon." Her voice was barely a whisper. He hesitated for only a heartbeat, then made a decision that would have made his by-the-book former self, the one who lived and breathed coalition regulations, spin in his non-existent grave. "And you're taking my quarters for tonight. The environmental controls in there are minimal, but they're still sputtering along, slightly better than this icebox. I'll bunk with Kale, or find a marginally warmer spot down in engineering with the repair crews." It was the only logical thing to do. Wasn't it? "No," she said quickly, a surprising, stubborn firmness in her weak voice. "I cannot. I will not displace you from your own cabin, Captain. I have already imposed far too much on your generosity, your safety." Her gaze, clouded as it was, met his, a desperate plea warring with her innate Ethel pride. She seemed to struggle with her next words, a new wave of shivers racking her body. "Perhaps," she began, then faltered, her shivering intensifying to a frightening degree. "The sleeping bag, it appears quite capacious. Large enough for two, perhaps. Shared body heat would be more efficient. Thermodynamically speaking, of course." Jax felt his eyebrows shoot towards his rapidly freezing hairline. Share a sleeping bag with her. An alien princess, for all intents and purposes, a passenger whose very existence was a coalition-level Omega secret, a woman hunted by deadly assassins and quite possibly half the galaxy. Protocol didn't just frown on that sort of thing, it screamed bloody murder, then had a conniption fit, then self-destructed. It was inappropriate, unprofessional, and about 1,000 kinds of incredibly, dangerously complicated given who she was rapidly turning out to be. But he looked at her, really looked at her, at the deathly bluish tinge of her lips, the alarming, terrifying dimness of her usually vibrant vitae streams, the way her slender frame trembled uncontrollably beneath the mountain of blankets. She was clearly suffering, dangerously close to irreversible hypothermic shock. And the pragmatic, survival-focused part of his brain, the part that had kept him and his crew alive through more than a few seemingly impossible situations, grudgingly, reluctantly, acknowledged the irrefutable, inescapable logic of her suggestion. Damn her ethyl practicality to the coldest circle of hell. And damn his own inexplicable, growing desire to protect this infuriating, enigmatic, and utterly captivating woman. "All right," he said finally, the single word feeling heavy, momentous, and entirely inadequate to the situation. He tried for a gruff, detached, professional tone, and failed spectacularly. "But strictly, and I mean strictly, Lyra, to get your core temperature back to a safe, non-lethal level. Nothing more. Understood?" He activated the sleeping bag's internal heating element. A soft, welcome hum filled the frigid room as it began to rapidly warm, a small, pulsing beacon of orange light and hope in the freezing, encroaching darkness. "It'll take a few minutes to reach optimal operational temperature." Lyra nodded, still shivering violently beneath her pile of makeshift coverings, but a tiny spark of something, relief, hope, flickered in the depths of her luminous orange eyes. "Thank you, Captain." A small, almost imperceptible pause. "Truly." Then, so softly he almost missed it, a mere breath of sound in the frozen air, she added, "Richard." His given name, not his rank. He'd told her, somewhat recklessly, in a moment of sheer desperation during the attack, that if they were going to face death together, she might as well use his name. She remembered. And somehow, the way she said it, with that unplaceable, enchanting melodic accent of hers, made his own familiar name sound alien, different, almost intimate, musical. As the sleeping bag rapidly warmed, indicated by a small, steady green light on its integrated control panel, Jax busied himself with ostensibly checking the dead, frozen heating unit on the wall, giving Lyra a measure of privacy, though the cramped cabin was far too small for any real, meaningful separation. When the indicator finally glowed a steady, inviting green, signaling that optimal temperature had been reached, he turned back to her, his own body now aching with the penetrating cold. "It's ready," he announced, his voice carefully neutral, trying to ignore the sudden, ridiculous thumping in his own chest. "You should get in first. Try to get as much direct contact with the internal heating elements as possible. It'll work faster that way." She nodded, rising somewhat unsteadily from the bunk, the blankets falling away. Then, to his utter, profound shock and dawning, wide-eyed horror, she began to methodically, with a strange, almost ritualistic grace, remove her outer layers of clothing, the thin, borrowed ship's jumpsuit she'd been wearing over her sleek, form-fitting ethel suit. "What in the actual, blazing void are you doing?" he yelped, the words exploding out of him, genuinely alarmed, his face instantly flushing a furnace hot despite the biting, sub-zero cold of the room. His mind went blank. Protocol, regulations, common sense, all vaporized in a microsecond of stunned disbelief. Lyra paused in her disrobing, her movements fluid and unhurried despite her obvious weakness, and looked at him with an expression of pure, genuine, innocent confusion. The orange of her remarkable eyes seemed to flicker, to widen slightly. Direct skin-to-element, or skin-to-skin, contact provides the most efficient and rapid thermal transfer, Captain Xenon. Is this not also common knowledge among your human species when attempting to prevent or reverse severe hypothermia? Her head tilted, a gesture of polite inquiry. Jax felt his ears practically burst into flames. Well, yes, technically, it is, but that is to say, he stammered, searching desperately for the right words, any words. How in the seven hells did one explain complex, deeply ingrained human social mores, millennia of cultural conditioning regarding nudity, intimacy, and personal space, to an alien princess who was apparently freezing to death and operating on pure, unadulterated, and terrifyingly blunt ethyl logic? His academy ethics courses had definitely not covered this particular scenario. Oh, she said softly, a dawning, luminous understanding in her incredible eyes. It was like watching a sunrise. A very awkward, very complicated sunrise. This is a cultural prohibition for your species, then. A significant human taboo regarding shared nudity, even in extremis, for survival. Not exactly a taboo, Lyra, he clarified, feeling increasingly flustered, out of his depth, and acutely aware of the rapidly dropping temperature and the even more rapidly escalating weirdness of his life. Just, not something generally done. Casually. Especially between people who barely know each other. Or who are, for example, a starship captain and his highly classified, extremely valuable, and currently very underdressed alien passenger. He was making an absolute mess of this. He sounded like a stuttering idiot. She considered this for a long, thoughtful moment, her head tilted slightly, the now very dim vitae streams on her partially visible ethyl suit pulsing with a faint, questioning light. Then, with a quiet, unshakable resolve that brooked no further argument, she continued to remove the borrowed ship's jumpsuit, leaving her clad only in the sleek, dark, almost featureless ethyl suit that seemed less like clothing and more like a second skin, molded perfectly to her slender, graceful form. The intricate, mesmerizing patterns of her vitae streams were now clearly visible, tracing paths like miniature, glowing orange rivers across the unfamiliar, advanced material and the tantalizing hints of the luminescent skin it revealed at her neck and wrists. They pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, like tiny, captured, sleeping stars. "We are not casual acquaintances, Captain Jax Xenon," she stated, her voice regaining some of its melodic strength, her gaze direct, unwavering, and holding a strange, new depth. "You are risking your life, your starship, and the lives of your entire crew to protect me, a stranger from a distant world. By ethyl cultural standards, Captain, such selfless actions, such profound risks undertaken on behalf of another, forge a bond of considerable, undeniable significance. A debt, an obligation, a connection that transcends mere acquaintance, or even professional duty." Before he could formulate a coherent response, or even fully process the weighty implications of her words, she had gracefully, with an almost ethereal fluidity, slipped into the waiting, beckoning warmth of the self-heating sleeping bag. Jax resolutely averted his eyes, though not before he caught a more complete, startling glimpse of her revealed form as she moved. The vitae streams were indeed an integral part of her, flowing like intricate, living circuits of soft orange light across her skin, converging and branching in mesmerizing, almost hypnotic patterns that seemed to pulse with a faint, nearly imperceptible internal energy. They were, undeniably, breathtakingly beautiful. And utterly, profoundly alien. He swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. "Your markings," he said, his voice a little rougher than he intended, his gaze fixed determinedly, almost desperately, on the frosted, utilitarian metal of the opposite bulkhead. "The vitae streams, as you called them. They are actually part of you. Your physiology." "Yes," came her voice, slightly muffled now from within the depths of the sleeping bag. "They are inherent to all Ethel. They appear at maturation, as you might term puberty, and grow more complex, more intricate, throughout our individual lives. They are, partly decorative, yes, a unique reflection of our lineage, our life path, our personal energy signature. But they are also deeply functional. They help us to channel, to focus, and to control our natural Ethel bioenergies." A brief pause, then, her voice softer still, "They are a fundamental part of our being, Jax. As essential as your heartbeat is to you." "They're beautiful," he said honestly, the word escaping him before he could stop it. He was still resolutely not looking directly at her, but the image of those flowing, living lines of light was seared into his mind. "Thank you, Captain," she said softly, a new warmth in her tone that had nothing to do with the sleeping bag's heating element. "The bag is quite warm now. Will you join me? I assure you, I will endeavor most diligently not to violate any further human cultural taboos. Unintentionally, of course." There was a definite hint of something new in her voice now. Was that humor? A gentle, alien form of teasing? It made him risk a glance at her. She had pulled the thick, insulated sleeping bag up to her chin, her cascade of silvery white hair spilling out like a snowdrift across his worn pillow, her expression one of innocent, almost clinical, yet somehow deeply inviting, expectation. There was nothing overtly seductive in her gaze, only a practical, logical appeal for shared survival, and perhaps, something more. A shared understanding.